Ladies and gentlemen, when a man hurts you, he often expects one thing from you: reaction. He expects tears, anger, long messages, explanations, questions, and emotional chaos. Because when you react, he feels powerful. He feels in control. He feels like he still owns space in your mind and heart. But the moment you stop reacting the way he expects, you confuse him. When a man hurts you, the most powerful move you can make is not confrontation, not explanation, not emotional display, but silence rooted in self-worth. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in reality, it is one of the highest forms of emotional intelligence. When you stop reacting, you take control of the situation without saying a word. A man who expects arguments, tears, or repeated conversations is prepared for noise, but he is never prepared for calm. Calm disrupts his expectations. Calm removes his advantage. Silence tells him that your peace matters more than winning an argument, and that message hits deeper than any speech ever could. When you don't explain yourself, you force him to sit with his actions alone. You are no longer carrying the emotional weight for two people. You are no longer trying to make him understand what he was never willing to respect. Silence shifts responsibility back to where it belongs. It says, I see what happened, and I choose myself. That choice is unsettling for someone who thought your emotions were always accessible. Silence also protects your dignity. Words spoken in pain often expose vulnerability to someone who caused the wound. Silence keeps your power intact. It prevents regret. It allows you to observe instead of react, to heal instead of reopen wounds. When a man realizes you are no longer emotionally reachable, he begins to question his importance in your life. Confusion grows when control disappears. There is also clarity in silence. It gives you space to reconnect with your intuition, to hear your own voice instead of defending it. You stop proving, chasing, and convincing. You start becoming selective. That shift changes how people treat you, because it changes how you treat yourself. Silence is not punishment, it is protection. It is not manipulation, it is self-respect. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the cycle. You stop negotiating your worth. You become unpredictable to someone who relied on your emotional responses to feel powerful. And in that quiet, something important happens. You begin to rise, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, confidently, and on your own terms. When a man hurts you, one of the most powerful shifts you can make is realizing that your self-worth is not tied to how he treats you, reacts to you, or understands you. Many women are taught to explain themselves, to fix misunderstandings, to hold emotional space even for those who cause them pain. But the moment you recognize your value without needing his validation, the dynamic changes completely. A man who expects you to question yourself, to wonder what you did wrong, or to shrink in response to his behavior becomes confused when you stand firm in who you are. Self-worth creates a quiet strength that cannot be argued with. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to defend it. It shows in the way you stop chasing conversations that drain you, the way you stop tolerating disrespect disguised as honesty, and the way you stop adjusting yourself to be easier to handle. When you move with self-respect, you remove the leverage someone once had over you. He expected self-doubt. Instead, he meets boundaries. Boundaries don't require anger. They don't require speeches or ultimatums. They are felt through consistency. When you no longer respond to hurt with over-giving, over-explaining, or emotional availability, you send a message that words could never carry. You communicate that access to you is earned, not assumed. That realization unsettles someone who believed your presence was guaranteed no matter how they behaved. What confuses a man most is not your absence, but your peace. When he sees that you are not broken, not bitter, not chasing closure, he begins to question his place in your life. He expected pain to slow you down. He expected his actions to define your confidence. But when your self-worth remains intact, it exposes the truth that his behavior was never about your value, only his capacity. Living from self-worth also shifts your focus inward. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You stop hoping for understanding from someone unwilling to listen. You invest your energy where it grows you, not where it drains you. This inner alignment is powerful because it cannot be manipulated. You are no longer reacting to hurt. You are responding to life with intention. When a man realizes that he cannot shake your sense of self, that his actions no longer control your emotional state, confusion sets in. Because nothing is more disarming than someone who knows who they are and refuses to abandon themselves, even in the face of pain. When a man hurts you, he is usually operating from an assumption that your emotions are easily accessible, that your reactions are guaranteed, and that your self-worth will shake the moment he pulls back, disrespects you, or causes pain. What truly confuses him is not confrontation, but the realization that your sense of value does not rise and fall with his behavior. When you no longer react the way he expects, when your confidence stays steady instead of collapsing, it disrupts the entire dynamic. People who hurt others often rely on emotional reactions to feel significant. They expect tears, repeated conversations, late-night explanations, or visible pain. These reactions reassure them that they still matter, that they still have influence. But when your self-worth is grounded, you don't rush to prove anything. You don't perform pain. You don't audition for empathy. You understand that someone who could hurt you already showed you their emotional limits. Self-worth changes how you move. You stop explaining why something hurt. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop shrinking yourself to keep someone comfortable. This calm confidence is deeply unsettling to someone who expected chaos. He doesn't know how to respond when guilt doesn't control you, when silence replaces arguments, and when your life continues without emotional collapse. A strong sense of self-worth also removes urgency. You don't feel pressured to fix what someone broke. You don't beg for clarity or chase closure. You trust that clarity comes from actions, not promises. That patience, that refusal to panic, sends a powerful signal that you know your value is not negotiable. What confuses a man most is realizing that his ability to affect you emotionally has limits. He thought his presence was central. He thought your happiness depended on his attention. But when your self-worth is intact, you become emotionally independent. You still feel, but you don't unravel. You still care, but you don't lose yourself. That balance is rare, and it forces reflection. Self-worth also shifts your focus from being chosen to choosing yourself. You stop measuring your worth by whether someone stays or leaves. You measure it by how well you honor your own standards. That shift changes everything. It removes desperation. It replaces emotional reactions with deliberate responses. When a man sees that hurting you didn't make you smaller, quieter, or weaker, confusion sets in. Because he expected power and instead he sees strength. He expected control and instead he meets self-respect. And nothing is more disarming than realizing the person you thought you could shake has already found solid ground within themselves. When a man hurts you, he often believes that time, familiarity, or emotional history will keep you available no matter what he does. He assumes that even if he crosses a line, you will eventually return to the same emotional position, ready to explain yourself, forgive quickly, or accept behavior that wounded you What truly confuses him is not anger or distance alone, but consistency and dignity. When you remain steady in your standards and calm in your actions, you show that respect is not optional and that access to you is not guaranteed. Consistency and dignity means you do not send mixed signals. You don't express strength one day and desperation the next. You don't declare boundaries only to abandon them when emotions rise. Your behavior aligns with your values, even when it feels uncomfortable. This alignment is powerful because it removes uncertainty from your own actions and places it squarely in his mind. He expected emotional swings, forgiveness without change, or reactions driven by pain. Instead, he meets stability. A man who hurts you is often prepared to manage chaos, but he is rarely prepared to face composure. Composure forces him to confront the reality of his actions without distractions. When you don't argue, accuse, or plead, there is no emotional smoke to hide behind. Your calm becomes a mirror. It reflects his behavior clearly, without exaggeration or dramatics. That reflection is unsettling because it leaves no room for denial. Consistency also protects your self-respect. Each time you choose dignity over impulse, you reinforce your own sense of worth. You prove to yourself you are capable of honoring your standards even when emotions are strong. This internal trust builds confidence, and confidence changes the way people interact with you. You no longer chase reassurance or seek approval from the person who hurt you. You move forward with quiet certainty. What confuses a man most is realizing that he cannot reset the situation simply by returning or offering minimal effort. Consistency and dignity means you do not reward disrespect with emotional access. You do not reopen doors without accountability. This doesn't come from bitterness, it comes from clarity. You understand that patterns matter more than apologies, and that respect is shown through behavior, not words. There is strength in predictability rooted in self-respect. When your responses are grounded and unwavering, you remove the emotional leverage someone once had over you. He can no longer provoke reactions to reassure himself of importance. He can no longer rely on history to excuse present behavior. Your consistency draws a clear line that cannot be blurred by charm, excuses, or guilt. When a man realizes that hurting you did not make you unstable, reactive, or desperate, but instead made you more grounded and selective, confusion follows. Because dignity that does not waver sends a message louder than confrontation ever could. It shows that your standards are not situational and that your value does not fluctuate based on how someone treats you. When a man hurts you, he often expects damage to show. He expects you to slow down, to lose confidence, to become emotionally stuck in what he did. He assumes the pain would define your next moves. What completely disarms him is growth, not rushed healing, not forced positivity, but real inner evolution that changes the way you think, choose, and live. Growth is confusing because it rewrites the story he thought he authored. Growth means you take the pain seriously, but you don't build a home inside it. You listen to what the hurt revealed about your boundaries, your needs, and your standards. Instead of asking why he did what he did, you begin asking why you tolerated what you did. That shift is powerful. It moves the focus away from him and places it back where it belongs with you. When your attention leaves him, his importance begins to fade. As you grow, your priorities quietly change. You stop craving explanations and start craving peace. You stop replaying conversations and start building routines that stabilize you. You invest in your health, your mindset, your purpose, your future. This isn't loud, it's subtle, but subtle growth creates visible change. Your energy shifts, your reactions soften, your tolerance for disrespect disappears. A man who hurt you expects your growth, to revolve around healing from him. What confuses him is when your growth outgrows the situation entirely. When your life expands instead of contracts, when new goals, new discipline, and new confidence appear, he begins to realize he was not the center of your world. He was a chapter, not the whole book. Growth also removes emotional dependency. You stop needing someone else to validate your pain or confirm your worth. You become your own witness. You trust your experience without requiring permission to move forward. This independence is unsettling to someone who once benefited from your emotional availability. He doesn't recognize you because you are no longer operating from the same place. Through growth, you also become more selective, not closed, but intentional more closely. You observe patterns. You choose depth over intensity. This discernment is born from pain, but refined by wisdom. It means you no longer give access easily, and that changes the way people approach you. Some fall away. Some rise to meet your standards. The most powerful part of growth is that it happens without announcement. You don't explain how much stronger you've become. You don't prove it. It shows in your posture, your choices, your calm. It shows in what you no longer entertain. That quiet transformation is confusing because it offers no confrontation, no drama, no emotional display to react to. When a man realizes that hurting you led not to your collapse, but to your elevation, it forces a reckoning. He expected scars to slow you down. Instead, they sharpened you. He expected pain to weaken you. Instead, it clarified you. Growth does not seek revenge, but it naturally removes you from spaces where you are not valued, and that absence speaks louder than any response ever could. When a man hurts you, one of the deepest wounds is not what he did, but the exhausting need you feel to explain yourself afterward. You explain how it made you feel, why it mattered, why it crossed a line, why you reacted the way you did. You search for the right words, the perfect tone, the calm explanation that will finally make him understand. But healing truly begins the moment you stop doing that. The moment you realize that someone who needed explanations to respect you was never listening in the first place. Explaining yourself over and over keeps you emotionally tied to the pain. It reopens the wound each time you justify your feelings to someone who caused them. Instead of healing, you stay in defense mode, constantly proving that your hurt is valid. But pain does not need permission to exist. Your feelings do not require approval. When you stop explaining yourself, you take your power back. There is a quiet strength in accepting that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you speak, because understanding was never their intention. They listen only enough to respond, not to change. Continuing to explain yourself to such a person drains your energy and delays your healing. Silence, in this case, is not avoidance. It is discernment. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop chasing emotional justice from the wrong source. You stop waiting for acknowledgement, remorse, or validation that may never come. This is where healing begins because your peace is no longer dependent on his ability to see your pain. You begin to process your emotions privately, honestly, without interruption or dismissal. You allow yourself to feel without defending those feelings. This shift also changes your relationship with yourself. You begin to trust your own judgment again. You no longer question whether you are too sensitive or overreacting. You accept that something hurts you, and that is enough. That self-trust is the foundation of emotional recovery. It stabilizes you. It grounds you. It reminds you that your inner voice matters. Stopping explanations also breaks the cycle of emotional negotiation. You are no longer trying to convince someone to treat you better. You are no longer bargaining with your boundaries. You simply live by them. This clarity is confusing to someone who expected continued access to your emotions. He was prepared for arguments and discussions, but not for quiet withdrawal rooted in self respect. Healing grows in the space you create when you stop over communicating pain. That space allows reflection, it allows rest, it allows your nervous system to calm instead of staying alert, waiting for the next misunderstanding. In that calm, you begin to rebuild yourself, not for him, for you. When explanations end, observation begins. You see patterns more clearly. You notice what is repeated, what is dismissed, what is minimized. You learn without confrontation. This awareness sharpens your choices moving forward. You don't need to announce your healing. It shows in what you no longer tolerate, in the conversations you no longer enter, in the peace you protect. Healing does not always look like closure. Sometimes it looks like quiet acceptance and emotional distance. It looks like choosing not to reopen a conversation that already showed you everything you needed to know. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop bleeding emotionally in front of someone who caused the wound. And in that silence, your strength slowly returns, steady and undeniable.